What's going on, y'all? Welcome to the latest episode. I'm hyped because you know why? I got Henny in my system. Welcome to this latest episode of Walking 90. This is your host, as always, Elliot Barr. This is your update show for USL League 1. And joining us is a real person in media, someone that has a checkmark by his name, is the one and only Mr. Jeff Reuter. How are you doing, my good man?
Duck the landing. Good work. I'm good. Thanks for having me, y'all.
No problem, man. Look, I try. As these two like to say that I'm media, I'm not. I am just a regular person chilling. That's my dog. I'm just here. But
you're definitely chilling. But you've been making a lot of moves in the past few months, and even this week. Let's
not play like you're not a part of the 2 Cent family now. Get out of here.
I'll be chilling.
I mean, you'd be chilling, you'd be tweeting wild stuff, but you also be making moves. Like, give yourself credit.
These can be two things. Yeah,
you're right. Well, the reason why we got Jeff on is because USL and MLS decided to go crazy this week and to make 2 leagues. What's going on with U.S. soccer pyramid? Yeah, it's pretty much like FIFA. Remember on FIFA, you used to be able to create a team? They took that function out because FIFA reasons. But that's what USL and MLS decided to do.
Pretty much.
Jeff, explain to us, man. You wrote a great article on the Athletic. By the way, if you're not subscribed to Athletic, make sure you do so. It costs about a cup of coffee a month. It's worth
not even less than a cup of coffee.
Right. Can you explain to us what is MLS 3 and what is it all about?
We're starting with MLS. I was going to say it's weird to report on 2 new leagues in the same week. So I need to make sure I know which lane to be driving in first. MLS D3. For a while, Major League Soccer has been in the process of designing like a reserves league. So somewhere that they can put for academy players who are too old to be getting anything out of the youth ranks, but not quite good enough to be either playing in MLS, playing in the USL, whatever. And they need kind of that interim spot. So they've been working on that since before the pandemic. And then couple of things happened. The academy structure in the country changed when the DA folded with the Development Academy. They started MLS Next as their own academy structure, and they needed that middle link. But now they're looking and they're seeing potential to possibly grow into other markets. I'm sure other academies that aren't MLS teams said, hey, we might want a team in this league. There are a couple of other teams that maybe like the structure, the setup of MLS that are kind of curious to see how it goes, not like jumping ship right away from USL or NISA or anything yet, but who knows? And they're just kind of interested in this hierarchy. So MLS will be launching a new league in 2022, 3rd division sanctioning. They've already submitted their proposal per my sources, and they will be looking to kick off next year. No age cap. You could sign players who are 27, 28, whatever, 37 if you want to, I guess. So there's still hope for all of us. And it's good. No, I mean, like it'll be starting next year. Whether it's good or not, I mean, it depends on your vantage point. It depends on how it all plays out because there are a lot of details that are still being solved. We don't know how big the rosters will be, how much the players will get paid. We don't know scheduling, how many games, how many teams, any of this stuff. We're still figuring out the logistics, but we do know that league will be there without an age cap and going for 3rd division sanctioning.
So one of the things I was wondering, because when there was the announcement at the end of 2020, teams like OCB, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that had said they're not. I think Timbers 2 might have been. Timbers 2 was one where they were saying they're not going to compete in USL next year, and it was with this idea that there was always that rumor. So would you expect those 2 teams to be? Is this going to be all MLS, or are there going to be? Is there going to be some teams, kind of not every team, like maybe Red Bulls 2 stays in the championship because they find it more beneficial?
Yeah, and Philly Union was the 3rd team last year that jumped out of the USL, but people kind of forgot Philly Union had a team in the USL last year anyway. I think that there will still be some teams.
I will die on this hill. They should have kept their name. I'm sorry.
They should have kept that Phlegm Steel.
Social Sporting Kansas City.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Park Rangers. No, cut me off however much. It's your show. You cut me off whenever you want. You can kick me out of the show anytime you want to. You got the power. You're big capital M media now.
No. I've gotten kicked off the show earlier, like last time. Don't give him that power.
That's because Kyle was wilding. That's all. Finish your point.
Sorry.
There will be some MLS2 teams still in the USL, at least in 2022. Red Bulls is like, the exact profile. The clubs that are taking it seriously, competitive in games, getting players developed through it. I think there would be a few. I could see like 3 or 4 that just from the outside looking at it makes sense for them to stay in the USL. Red Bulls being one. LA Galaxy 2 is another one that kind of fits that bill for the most part. Real Monarchs, depending who. Shout out. I've been waiting to wear this shirt for so long because it's just so niche, and finally found my moment. So shout out to the defending USL championship league final. What did they call that game anymore? Anyway, Monarchs. Wow. Exactly, a waste of time. They didn't even play it last year, to be fair. No, that's fine. So yeah, there will be like a few clubs that it makes sense for them to keep one that's in a more senior professional circuit like the USL, so that it's not going through the growing pains of it, and they're actually seeing their players develop. But if the league is up and running and functional for MLS in 2022, and it looks like it's on track to actually be coherent and stay on the tracks, then maybe it would make more sense for some of these clubs to jump out.
So does this, with the announcement of this, does it help with like making players skip college for playing time, essentially? And how does that affect like the draft?
Yeah, it really could. I think that there was always that kind of middle tier of the players who were like in MLS academies and then didn't sign. So most of them signed in the USL, right? If they were going to go pro. So they would be signing League One, Championship, find a club. A lot of players who leave college actually have like handshake agreements with USL clubs when they leave. So, for example, I'm writing a piece for The Athletic, should drop tomorrow, I think, about Hassani Dotson, who plays for Minnesota United. And he had a handshake agreement with New Mexico United, where if he wasn't picked or if he wasn't signed by Minnesota United for the 2019 season, he would have signed for New Mexico United. And it worked out just fine for Minnesota. It didn't work out as well for New Mexico. But yeah, that is very common practice. So you might see fewer of those deals as, MLS teams like Seattle could have had Dotson's homegrown rights. And if they had said, hey, we're going to put a claim on him, we're going to stash him in Sounders 2, they couldn't really do that with Tacoma Defiance because he wasn't coming directly from the academy, but now they have a place that they could put him. So it really could affect the draft just in terms of the number of prospects. It wouldn't surprise me if the draft is like shrunk to 2 rounds now, moving in the next 3 years.
So you bring up Seattle because that was going to be one of my questions to you. So Seattle has a team in USL League and USL Championship in Tacoma Defiance. Could they potentially throw in a Sounders 2 and D3 and then just make that a true pyramid, quote unquote pyramid? Yeah. And you see more teams thinking in that same route?
I think it depends on how big the academy is. Right? Because I think that there are some teams like Red Bulls, Monarchs, a couple of others have actually found that they do have like a depth of players, and they have their 17, 18-year-old players who maybe wouldn't be ready to play for their championship team. Los Angeles Galaxy 2 is another one like this. But they might be good enough to leave the academy. So then for some teams, it might make sense to have that kind of interim step and actually go academy 3-2-1. The question is money. Right. And it's going to be a question of you have to sign a lot of these dudes to pro contracts. So then how many of these players do you want to be paying $35,000 that you want otherwise or more? And then the other question is, the operational cost, the coaches, stadium rental, facilities. Is all of that worth it to truly have that hierarchy? The answer would ultimately, again, be how many good young players do you have who need minutes? Seattle seems like the profile of a club that would make sense for that, actually. Just because they do have the infrastructure and the finances to really be able to pull that off. But I would imagine that MLS teams will really try to keep it to one team beneath the MLS team maximum until they figure out how this pathway is actually going to work.
So I want to ask this question. Where would this league fall at competitively? Because there's been a lot of talk on Twitter, which we all know can be a weird place at times.
Can be.
Where would this league fall at? Would it be more aligned with USL League One and NISA, or more USL Championship, or would it kind of fit in between there somewhere?
I think competitively, it would really fluctuate game to game because not every MLS academy is good. Frankly, there are some really poorly run, academies. There are some academies that are not developing players really well. And I mean, look, you've kind of seen this over the last 5 years. If you're looking at, MLS2 teams, like, yeah, maybe they would take this more seriously because it's in-house, because all of these players maybe feel more engaged with the MLS team. So they take the D3 seriously. But for the most part, like, I don't know, we've talked about OCB. We've talked about, Fort Lauderdale, Revs 2. Like, some of these clubs aren't really getting the most out of their affiliates, I would argue. Some of them aren't really sure how to use them. And you saw it with Timbers 2 for a lot of their tenure. I think that before the rebrand to Tacoma Defiance, when it was Sounders 2, I think that they were another one of those teams that was usually marked and circled as an easy dub if you're an opponent. But I mean, now Tacoma Defiance is taking it so much more seriously, and they are a very difficult team to beat. So I think that competitively, you are looking at a league that a good matchup could be reminiscent of a championship game, but I would guess most of it is at or frankly below what you see between like two independent League One teams, for example.
So then one of the things I was wondering is with the affiliate situation, obviously with Ford Madison and the Chicago Fire, but then even in championship, Rio Grande Valley and San Antonio FC, that they somewhat have affiliates, but not right. They kind of function more as independent than anything else. Do you see the MLS team still trying to keep in touch with those affiliates in the championship as well, or do you think they're going to break off because of this MLS 3?
I think there could be some interesting case-by-case examples, but I really think it would be so much less formal, like Colorado Springs and Colorado as well. Like this year they had 9 guys, I think, loaned out to Colorado Springs switchbacks, and I'd have a really hard time imagining that would be the case again if they had their own MLS D3 team, right? So I think on the whole, I just have a really hard time seeing where an MLS team would want to keep such a formal relationship if they had their own thing in-house, because they can control all of the sides of it. But at the same point, if you have a player who's 24-year-old forward who had done really well, like let's say Mark Anthony Kaye didn't come off as well as he did with LAFC when he first signed up there, and he has the talent, he has the potential, but he was like already too good for the USL Championship by the time he left, right? But if you need him to get his confidence, if you just need him to pick up some assists to get full 90 minutes because he's coming in and out of LAFC's lineup, like maybe it would make sense to send him back to Louisville for 3-4 games, right? Or Daniel Rios, if you needed him to get some goals in North Carolina or whatever to go back to his roots. You could do stuff like that. I think that would still make a lot of sense, but I would think that for the most part, like a Rio Grande Valley, they'd already been working to kind of distance from Houston. And so it wouldn't surprise me if at that point they just kind of consciously uncoupled or whatever.
A question I want to ask you is, will we see like a fluctuating market between MLS 3, I don't know if they really have a real name for it, and USL?
It's a good name as any, I think. MLS D3 is what I've been writing, so let's do that.
All right, so MLS D3, will it be like a market between where, say, if a team like North Carolina want to buy a player from an MLS 3 team, will that be there, or will it be one of the things that we see where it's more or less get a player on a free and there's not really a real market?
That's the hard part, because that's also a question then about USL teams paying transfer fees, and you're not seeing a lot of USL teams who actually do want to pay those at any level. I mean, you saw it with like Miami paid Ford Madison one for Brian Silvestri, but like there isn't like a critical mass of teams in the championship who are dishing out. I mean, it would really be $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. And at that point you're all in. And so a lot of teams will have profiles for players and they'll say, we want to spend X dollars in terms of total salary plus transfer fee. And if they think the player is going to need a higher salary to leave an MLS setup and come be like a USL championship player, the transfer fee is probably going to be a little bit lower that they could afford within their, budgeting and everything else. So I would guess that you'd see more of the inverse, where you see I'm picking on random. There's no strategy to this. We're just pinballing now. But like, let's say like NYCFC. Is
there any strategy in U.S. soccer? I don't think there's ever been a strategy.
I don't think so. I really don't. That's the magic of it. That's what keeps me in a job. Everyone rebrands every 5 years. That's the strategy. I think that you look at like an NYCFC, they brought in Cody Mizell from New Mexico United, right? So like maybe they would be more willing to pick up a flyer on a young player that they're not 100% sold on, but they want to get his rights. They want to get him into camp, trading with the first team, playing for the 2 team, and then after a year be able to make a judgment on that player. I could see more of that happening. So actually more players rising from league, but at that point it's not rising, right? Like you're not rising from the championship if you're going to go play an MLS D3. That's a step back, but you're in the MLS setup. So I think it would be appealing to a lot of young players who are wanting to play at the highest level possible. So it could be really interesting for the transfer market.
Do you think it's possible that with these MLS teams signing more and more, players from South America, players from Europe, maybe younger players, they sign them and stash them over in the D3 just so they can have those rights, and that way if a European team comes calling, then they can just cash out on them? Do you see that totally becoming more likely?
I think so. I think it's a good safeguard. You look at like Weston McKennie, who was in Dallas's academy and then signed with Schalke, or you see it with Gio Reyna, I guess, who was in NYCFC's academy and then went right to Borussia Dortmund. I think for players like that, if an MLS team is like, look, we'll offer you a pro contract, we'll get you into this at age 15 or 16, and then you're starting kicking there, it could be more appealing. Maybe, I picked on like 2 of the 5 best players in the men's national team pool. So that might be like extreme examples, but if you're looking at another player who's like 17, 18 and
you've got Aronson from Philly, you've got Yedlin from Seattle,
McKenzie.
You've got
McKenzie, you got Josie, but like for someone like Josie, you're getting him minutes right away, right? When he came out of, because he was like 17, 19 when he was drafted. So you're able to get
still
them.
The perfect league for Josie in that ankle.
I feel
him. Come on.
I gotta say, I have nothing but love for Josie Altidore. I love
Josie
Altidore.
too. I love Josie too.
Yeah,
but
he's in a tough moment right now, but no, he's great. So, I want to see more of him. Yeah.
As you talk about this, so like we're talking about like younger and younger with D3. How does that affect the NCAA and college rights and playing in college versus playing in the academy, and how does it intertwine, or does it come to a head point in 2022? Because we've been talking about this for a while, like how detrimental NCAA is to players, not just soccer, but all.
Right, to all players, right? Because, at this point, they're looking and saying, if I can get paid at age 18 as soon as I get out of high school, or if I'm still senior in high school, whatever, why would I go to college if I think this is a pathway? The answer is if you don't make it big, or if you're an MLS veteran, you probably don't have enough to retire on, so you need that degree anyway, right? But I think what you see then is more difficult decisions. I think that you see more players who are kind of on the cusp, but wouldn't sign homegrown contracts right out of high school, maybe getting more deals earlier. So that means fewer players coming out of college. If you have fewer players in college, I think that you would see a serious sort of course correction. They would probably try to find a way to make that more appealing, whether that's a loosening of the rules, whether that's MLS saying, more players could get drafted after 1, 2, or 3 years of college instead of right now where it's just a handful of them who are leaving college early in Generation Adidas and the rest of them are seniors. That could be a possible avenue. But I think that as I look at it, you're absolutely right. I think that would be the part of the kind of men's soccer structure in this country that would be affected the most, along with like independent youth clubs who aren't in MLS Next. I think that the other group that would be the college game, because as you've said, it's had really mixed results for a lot of really talented players. And I think at a certain point, they're looking for the way to have their career start off as good as possible, I guess.
So would this league be on TV or anything like that? Like marketability wise, like
Paramount.
I know a lot of people are going to, it probably is Paramount. I know a lot of people are referring to this league as the MLS Reserves League, but I'm sure MLS they love a rebrand, as we already explained.
That's it.
How are they going to market this to people and try to get people to watch this? Because I'm pretty sure they're going to put it on TV some way, somehow.
They'll stream it. Let's be clear. I don't know who they're finding TV airtime for, but I think that what will happen, I would guess, is that
are we talking iPhone? Like just Zoom calls?
Are we about to Periscope a red screen versus?
No, it's just going to be like
IG Live.
It'll be like that U2 album that was on everyone's phone suddenly one morning, like a decade ago, and just suddenly you have like an
U2 album. Oh my god!
That's how it's going to be done.
It's
just
like a good month to figure out how to delete that thing off.
I know. The funny thing is, the album's fine. It's fine. I just don't think people would have bought it. No, but like with that, they'll look at it and say, like, as we're doing our TV deal, so all of the MLS TV contracts end after the 2022 season. So they're going to be renegotiating. They're looking at the 2026 World Cup and saying, hey, fan interest might be a lot higher at that point. And by the way, we have hundreds of other games you can put on your streaming platform. If you're, CBS Paramount, if you're ESPN, you have a place to put all of those games. I mean, it's working really well for ESPN and the USL right now. And they're seeing some serious, I know that the USL was like a major boost for ESPN coming out of the pandemic when they started playing games in June and July, or in July. They looked at that as like, finally, we have live sports content. Finally, we have games that we can put on our airwaves so that fans, people, subscribing customers aren't canceling because at least, well, let's just watch American soccer, right? So I think that would be the potential for it. The way that you market it is you say you might see a future star.
On a Tuesday afternoon?
Right? Like, what else are you going to do, right? I mean, that should be the slogan for a lot of American soccer. It's just, what else are you going to watch, right? And I think that could help. But yeah, overall, I would say that if you have it on streaming on odd days, I completely agree with you. Don't do it on Saturday and Sunday. Don't do it Friday night. Like, put it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday when people just need stuff to watch, right? You might see the next Caden Clark. You might see the next I'm trying to name a second player who rose from the USL to an MLS team last year and struggled. But, you might see that player who might jump in, like the Aaronsons, right? The McKenzies, right? Like, you might see some of these guys who are coming up before they're a star. Some of these like U.S. youth nationals, like Ricardo Pepi when he was playing for North Texas, like players like that who are then stepping over and playing in this league instead. That's the best I got. Yeah.
He still haunts my dreams. That's fine.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'd never forget that he scored a hat trick against us.
He's so good.
So what we're saying is Friday afternoon, 3 p.m. is
do you
the
take it to
prime
the
time.
That's still too
prime
close
time
to Friday at 5.
Thursday,
That's a
11:30 in the
9 a.m.
morning.
Friday game.
There you go. There you go.
Low-key, I would watch that. But they got to have orange lights. They got to have
we
orange
fixed
lights.
it.
There you go. They should hire us as the marketing team.
They should.
No, they
We're on
should.
a roll.
Those games are going to be on a Tuesday at 3, and we all making happy hour. Like,
Look,
You put it on right after Champions League. Champions League ends, boom, you got this MLS.
The
3.
next best thing. MLS
Right.
just
defense.
rolling right in, baby. Just rolling
you
right
just
in.
watched Real Madrid and Barcelona. Here's OCB.
Here's OCB versus Portland 3.
Can
Yeah,
you
let's
imagine the amount of slander that was? Oh God, Twitter was roasting everybody.
I'm just trying to picture Alex Scott with a serious face saying, all right, we just talked about this great Champions League match, and now
Stick
we're
around.
going to go to a park over somewhere in – is this a rec league? What is this?
Are they wearing
I could
t-shirts?
see it.
Beer is this?
Right. I would, if I'm a coach, I'm totally sipping a beer during the entire 90, right? Or the entire 45, and then I'm cracking a second one for the second half.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah. But I will say, I mean, these we've actually kind of stumbled into something else, which is like, I'm seeing this a lot on Twitter since I reported this with Pablo at The Athletic. A lot of people are like, okay, what does this mean for League One? What is this going to be for the league? Like, how are they going to compete against it? Well, like, I think that you're looking at two different demographics. I think that you're looking at this. Yes, you can watch it, but I think for the most part, it's going to be for people who want to watch young players, who are going to be coming to MLS, might be playing for national teams, might be moving abroad someday. And I think that for the USL, it's still very much what the USL has been, which is the highest level for most markets. I mean, Charlotte and Austin, not quite, but in Miami, but like the highest level of men's professional soccer in these markets locally. So there is that tie to that. It's in these underserved cities for professional sports in general. So like Louisville is wrapped around it because they don't have the other pro teams. Omaha don't have the other pro teams, right? Tucson. So it makes sense. Madison, frankly. So in that sense, like this is where it makes sense for them because they are covering and being professional sports in these markets. I think that you'd see a different level of player who might be a player who is older than 22 is going to have a tough time being convinced to sign in that MLS D3 league, I would say, compared to playing in the USL, where at least you have your own club identity. You're playing at the senior team of your own team, right? Like you're not trying to reprove yourself after finishing college. I think that's still going to be the route for the USL. So it could be an opportunity.
It's just a matter of how many of these teams leave USL League One. Does Toronto, does Revs 2, does Fort Lauderdale? Like it just in terms of, do you think those teams are going to leave? And I feel like USL League One will be fine because they'll be able to add a lot more expansion teams. Right. Fingers crossed. I mean, they have one almost set with Spokane. They still have Portland, which they've been talking about for the last year, and nothing's happened. And then obviously there's going to be other markets and maybe teams in the championship come down. But how many do you see any more of the teams in League One jumping over to that MLS D3?
Well, Yeah, there's also Northern Colorado, which I'd completely forgotten about until I was like rechecking like who's going to be in League One next year.
And Central Fuego, and then Fort Wayne will.
Yeah, that's right. And Fresno will get their own team again too. Right. That's right. So it's I would have a hard time imagining that many MLS teams would keep one in League One because on paper it's D3, it's D3. So you might as well go with the one where you're sharing flights, you're sharing facilities, right? You're not paying annual dues to the USL, you're keeping it all in your own pocket, right? So I would imagine within that same level, you wouldn't see many. I think that you would see more clubs who are staying, if any, to be clear. Like I wouldn't surprise me if, 4 now? I think that there's still 4 affiliates in League One. You mentioned 3.
Yeah, because North Texas.
Right. Yeah, so that's 4. So I would be surprised, but even if they all left, that's still 8 returning, assuming all the teams, see it through. And then you would have, I think, 1 or 2 more coming on with Fuego and with possibly Northern Colorado. I think might be ready to come on next year already. And then you build from there, right? And as long as you have at least 8 teams, you can keep D3 sanctioning. So I would have a tough time.
League One benefits more actually, because what if these teams drop to MLS D3 and it's not as competitive as they want, so then they move back into League One, and so more teams are seeing that and they're going, well, maybe D3 is not for my team. Let me move them to League One. And how does it's kind of like apples and oranges, but it's kind of competitiveness, right? We don't know what it's going to be competitive wise. We know what teams are in League One.
We think we do, right? But like League One, they played a season, and then they had the COVID season, and now they have the coming out of COVID season. So we really don't even know what League One is aiming to be in terms of like, is it a smaller championship or is there something else to it? And so I think that 4 teams already in League One, it will be very interesting to see. And for the league itself, I think they could. The 2 sides of it is MLS is going to say the USL stabilized after our partnership. And after MLS partnered with the USL in 2014, it overtook the NASL. It became the actual like lower league system of the United States for all intents and purposes. And then it was able to grow and become what the championship is today, and eventually launch League One to fill its own place when it had moved up to D2. What the USL will say, I'm sure, is that this finally gives them the opportunity for the first time since they got their momentum boost in 2017 and 18 for them to actually chart their own course and say, like, it's our league. We're not thinking about MLS. We're not asking what the affiliates want. We're not asking what's best for Revs 2, right? We are doing whatever we think is truly best for the USL. And it gives you, I mean, frankly, this could speed up the timeline for promotion and relegation if they live up to their promises, because now you're not trying to figure out what do we do with these affiliate teams, right? Now you don't have to deal with it. I'm serious. Like this is one of those things that speeds up. You can do it because you don't have to clumsily say North Texas won and who's the worst affiliate in the championship this year? Whoever the worst affiliate in the championship is, are you going to flip those 2? Because who's excited about that if you just move one MLS affiliate up and one MLS affiliate down, right? Now you're not worrying about there's more intrigue. You can kind of push the league forward more without people digging their heels in because they signed up just to field their second team in the league. There is serious potential from the USL side, I would imagine, that they would be able to step forward like that. So it'll be really interesting to see which of those 2. Obviously, the truth is almost 100% going to be somewhere in the middle between those 2 extremes, right? But it'll be very interesting to see which side of that plays out more.
So I just want to say, when you mentioned Pro Rel, we have the numbers down. My fault.
What was that?
I didn't mean to cut you off. I just want to say, when you mentioned Pro Rel, we had like a boost in interest.
I hope so. No, it'd be great.
I forgot the tin hat.
No, it's not tin hat. I don't think it has to be. Nah, I think that there's merit.
Someone asked, do you think Charlotte Independence will drop?
That's a really good question. I think that it isn't just a Dan D'Amico question. I think that that's also a question of my wife's from Madison. I'm allowed to say forward as often as I want to. I'm just trying to keep the peace here. It's not even just a Dan D'Amico question. It's not even just who takes over as the new owner, right? It is also a question of like, how big is Charlotte FC in terms of a hindrance to running the Independence is the way that they want to. Could they move down? Possibly, but they paid expansion fees to get in, right? And so at that point, either you resell your charter and you try to make a little money that way, or you just lost more money, but you bought a franchise. That's not ideal. So it'll be really interesting to see. I think that Charlotte does look on the outside like a club that has the potential to be a more controllable, like it's easier for you to measure success if you're in League One than if you're in the championship, if you know that you have an MLS team in your market, right? Like you can point to it and say development. You can point to it and say sales. You can point at it and say, supporter culture. You can point at it and say merch, whatever you do with it. I think it's easier. Your barometer for what is the measure where you say you've had success or not is a little bit lower. It's a little more manageable. And I think that gives you even more potential, frankly, to take risks and to try stuff that you wouldn't do if you're just trying to safely move it along.
Do you think any of the former, I know we talked about like Philadelphia Union, but do you think you're going like a team as, I know you mentioned LA Galaxy too, so I won't mention them, but how does it look moving forward for a Sporting Kansas City, for example, for a Atlanta United 2, where they're not terrible in USL Championship, but they're not really, they're just stuck in this middle mediocrity. Do you think that's going to change for them? Maybe they go down and that boost in, having that ability will help them? Or do you think they just stay in championship, still get that exposure and still just stay as mediocre as possible?
Right. But you're also still playing a better level of opponent, right? Yeah. So I think that a lot of that's going to depend on who or what are the details of this MLS D3 league. And if they look at it and say, worse opponents, but cheaper, like how much are you getting out of it? I mean, like Wilson Harris, is he really getting minutes with Kansas City? Probably not, right? So and that was your top young striker last year. So I think that for them, it really is going to be case by case, but I think that you also have to look at your players and say, how close are these players to being above a D3 level? Like if you have like a 17-year-old who's making their professional debut, obviously didn't go to college, obviously hasn't played anywhere else. They're just coming out of your academy and now playing their USL debut. USL Championship is probably a step too far. And if you look and say our best age group is our U17s, maybe we move them to D3 so that they're already getting that sort of training early. We loan them out to a different club for D2 if they need it, or we bring them right into MLS. But if your best players are 19 and 20, that might be a step back, or 21. And at that point, you might want to stake it out for one more year in the championship while you see what's cooking over in MLS D3, and you stick around and still at least know what you're paying for when you pay those dues to the USL for another year.
So someone asked, do you know if there are any plans for any of these D3 teams to try to coexist in some of these USL markets?
I think, market? I think that it's always, we're finally getting to the point where the concept of having two professional men's soccer teams in the same market kind of makes sense, depending on the team, depending on the relationship, depending on the demographics they're chasing. I can't wait to get like a normal year of Inter Miami versus the Miami FC in Miami, just to see how that goes. Because I think that'll show, like, can you actually support two unassociated clubs like that? It's one thing to say Red Bulls 2 also plays in Harrison, but their name says Red Bulls too. Like they're the reserve team, right? They're the second team for Red Bull. So it's not really a competition. I mean, the markets that this would be relevant for is what? Austin, Charlotte, Miami. I think that it'll also depend, by the way, on where MLS wants to put its D3 teams. There is going to be the potential that they don't play in the same city. So like if Dallas wanted to have North Texas play in Fort Worth instead, like that's possible, right? And then you're tapping into another market. You're tapping into another mass of people and fans, whatever, who might see this as more accessible. If you're Minnesota United, like you could put them in Rochester, I guess, if you want. You could put them in Duluth if you want to, right? Like you could figure out whatever you want to do with it, because the sanctioning standards are like 1,000, 2,000 seat stadium instead of going for 5K to get second division. So you can, fuck around and find out a little bit more if you want to. And so I think that for them, it is going to be a little bit of a trial ground, especially those first few years, because I think that they'll want to find a way how to get more people excited about your reserve league while you put it in a place where they don't have the first team. So then that's the way that they're able to say, okay, well, I do have access to the MLS team and I'm seeing their future stars. AAA baseball, that's where you're actually seeing that sort of model kick in. As far as market competition, like we just don't have a good case study yet. So it's really hard to say whether or not they can pull it off, because no one's actually done it thus far anyway.
Most definitely. So I think that's a lot for MLS 3. which, by the way, if you want to read the article, check out The Athletic. Once again, it doesn't cost that much. So we're now ready to transition over to USL-W, which popped out of nowhere.
That is, by the way, sorry, that is such a good slogan that I'm going to tell our marketing team, The Athletic, it doesn't cost that much. That is
It's really that simple.
Good campaign. Like, it doesn't cost that much. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
even if
Once
you didn't
again,
find the deal. Yeah.
I already read for marketing. I'm not that bad. So we got USL-W that's kicking off. So these are the founding clubs: Chattanooga Red Wolves FC, Greenville Triumph, Hartford Athletic, Caw Valley FC. I was about to mess that whole name up. Minnesota, South Georgia Tormenta FC, Queensboro FC, and Washington DC, also known as DC United.
Right.
Jeff.
Yeah.
How in the world is this about to work?
I think they're still kind of figuring it out. I am very excited to find out the plans, but I think that a lot of it is I'm surprised by the clubs that signed on. Like it's just kind of a random plot of the USL, right? So there's a part where you look and say it's not regional, right? Because like you're covering a large portion of the country with the teams that you just listed. It's not regional. It's not championship clubs. The only one, I mean, Hartford and yes, Queensboro, but they haven't kicked a ball yet. So, it's Hartford. That's the only team that's been in the USL Championship that's putting out a team like that. And you have a lot of reps who are in League One, and then you have an independent team in my own backyard up here in Minnesota. So it's such a strange kind of eclectic group that I think that a lot of the logistics will figure it out. I mean, they'll have to announce it coming up before the season, right? But are you flying? Are you busing? Are you hosting tournaments? Are you playing just in the summer? Are you going to play spring to fall, right? Like, I think a lot of that stuff still needs to be figured out. The fact that it's amateur status for the first year means that you're not necessarily looking to say, we need to have independent ownership. We need to have minimum stadium standards. We need to have broadcast accessibility, any of these things. And so you can figure it out in real time. I think that there is a massive need to actually have a proper second division women's soccer league in this country. I think that we've started to show now that the NWSL is stuck after seeing so many first division women's leagues, start and stop because of ownership and leadership issues. And now that you have the NWSL finally on its course, I think that you're able to look and say, okay, what about the second division? We have the markets. You're not in many markets right now in the NWSL, right? You're going to get to 12, I think is the current count after the expansion next season in San Diego and Angel City. So you have plenty of places, that there are a lot of cities in the country that can have soccer teams, even in a lower league level. It'll be interesting to see if this is kind of a trial and error before they would go for something like that sanctioning. But I think that, it's ownership groups in the USL and elsewhere that were interested in getting a women's soccer team that also like the setup, the framework, the leadership, the vision that the USL have and want to bake it into that instead of go in a different league that doesn't have that sort of second, third division experience.
So one thing I was wondering is how this might affect WPSL and WSL. How do you think that's going to affect? Do you think more of those teams there are going to jump over to the USL-W, or do you think there's going to be more teams in USL that already have a USL men's team that's going to want to start their women's affiliate or women's team as well, kind of similar to what Greenville, Hartford, Tormenta did?
Right. Yeah, I think that they're going to really want to see what this structure is going to look like, because I think that if the player pool that they have, a lot of college players, right? A lot of, young, just out of college players as well, who are still kicking it. If they think this is going to be more visible to the NWSL, if they think that this is going to be, if they're like going for the career and not just, kick around, because if you can, why wouldn't you? If they're actually doing it with professional ambitions, or if they're doing it to stay closer to home and this has a club that's a little bit closer, if eventually they get sanctioned and start paying their players, that would be a huge advantage. But right now it really is regional. And you're buying in for the potential. You're buying in because you think and you look at the USL and say, okay, they have D2 men's, they have D3 men's. They can move up to D2 women's eventually, and you're trying to stick on so that you're part of that sort of inaugural move into it. As for clubs themselves, I think a lot of them have just kind of found the model that works for them. A lot of these leagues are so regional that it would take 2 or 3 of your league rivals leaving the league and joining you in the other one for it really to make sense for you to jump ship, right? And I think it'll just depend proof of concept. They've been doing it longer. Whether or not it's been successful, you tell me, right? I think it varies substantially depending where you're looking. But I think overall, the early feedback is wait and see. We don't know enough about the W League to confidently say this is going to be an upgrade over what we have. This is something we don't have. This is something that can really scale up. We just need to see more. But I think a lot of people have faith in the USL's judgment over the last few years in terms of league starting, in terms of setting that sort of vision to grow the game in local communities and at the grassroots level where people are buying into that more.
So it's kind of like a WNISA versus the USL-W type thing.
Yeah, a bit of that.
Which one do you see as more beneficial to like player development?
I think the one that's going to be more beneficial is the one that can step into Division II and actually start paying these players and getting players professional minutes earlier, because it's still amateur. I mean, they'll call it pre-professional. I think that's what they've termed it.
No, it's amateur.
It's amateur, right? Like you're keeping your college rights. Exactly. Yeah. But it's pre-professional, and so fair play. But the one that's actually going to help develop it, we have a league. We have several leagues in this space. You've named a couple. Whistle's another one that NISA's trying to start and get it. They're figuring out what they're going to do with that league. But they're all in the same sort of amateur space. And we don't have anything that's truly like that step in between the amateur space or the college game, whichever route you take. It's like the game life where you spend like 2 turns in some random course, and then you end up at the same place, which never made sense because that's way too short for that to be a meaningful decision, but whatever. Board games, why people bring me on podcasts. But it's the same sort of thing where you have college, you have amateur, and eventually you end up either in NWSL or you don't, right? And there's got to be something else in the middle there that's actually preparing you for that, getting you those reps earlier. I mean, we've seen some significant movement the last couple of weeks in terms of younger players being able to play in the NWSL who weren't in college. That could be significant, in terms of helping bridge that gap. But not everyone's going to be ready to go pro at 15. Most players are going to need transitional years. Where do you have that space for that? Right now, that doesn't exist in the women's game in this country.
I don't think she's ready for NWSL. Just throwing that out there.
Probably not to start, right? Mm-hmm. Not to start, but like if she's training there for 2 years, she's going to be better off than if she's. That's the theory, right? I don't know.
Yeah, so I was going to say, do you think it's going to conflict with the NCAA? Kind of like how the MLS D3 might, get into NCAA's territory. Do you see at the current status of this amateur, do you see that conflicting with the NCAA on the women's side?
It depends when the season is.
Okay.
Because I think that if they have the season kickoff in the summer, like the NPSL does, if you have like a local NPSL team or a USL League 2 team, they have very similar schedules where most of your players are college players who are coming back for the summer, right? And if that's what the USL-W League is going to be doing, I think that works really well. And I think that you look at that for, like, for example, the Minnesota community-owned team that's going to be launched, or they have their kickoff announcement this Sunday at 3 at Elizabeth L. Robbie Stadium. If you're watching from Minnesota, go do it. I can't. I was booked before I knew this was happening. But if you're playing for the Gophers and you're still in Minnesota, you have an internship, you have a job you like, you just like living in the cities, whatever, you're from the cities, you don't have to leave to be able to find your summer club. Like, you can just stay here and you can be playing for them. You can see that with colleges in Greenville, colleges in Hartford, right? Like, if you're pulling from college players, it actually can be beneficial. The number of NPSL veterans who have gone on to play in Major League Soccer is significant. And if you can do a similar thing and bridge the gap, so it's not just the one season, whether it's spring or in or fall, where you're actually having a true 6 months at least of playing games, if you're playing in the W League too, that could be a significant boost for the college game as well.
Do you see MLS trying to also create a D3 for women's?
Let's do it. Let's just get MLS the whole pyramid, right? Everyone would be so happy.
At some point they will.
Nobody would be happy, I don't think, with that. I think MLS has been a little bit more not hesitant, but not cautious. But I think that they've been more calculated in how they're going about building some of this stuff out. Like Reserves League, the original Reserves League for MLS, where it was literally like you're calling players who retired 2 years ago to fill in for a game that's being played in 2 hours because you know that they live within a drive of you. Like that was actually happening in the old MLS Reserves League. They waited 6-7 years before even announcing what their next thing would be that would be more sophisticated because they were waiting for the academies to catch up and have players ready to go. So I think that they're also looking at how do we not overextend our financials? How are we not over-investing on the front end and then catching ourselves burnt if this doesn't turn out? So I think that they would wait to see, okay, the MLS D3 is working. It's doing what we thought. There's growth potential. Clubs are starting to see the benefits from it. Now we'll get into the women's side. But I think that MLS actually has an incredibly good working relationship with the NWSL. You see it with some similar ownership groups, but you see it at the leadership level. You see it with even just in the early stages with Commissioner Lisa Baird and her conversations with MLS Commissioner Don Garber and how there already is that sort of shared, like, how do we move it together at the first division level? And obviously the counterpoint is, okay, what are you doing for the rest of the levels? What are you doing for the rest of soccer in this country beyond your leagues? But I think that at that point, I know, unfortunately, that's just the answer. But like, it's going to take either the USL, someone else who wants to independently step in, or the NWSL setting up. I think all of those are just better equipped to do it at that level than MLS is at this point because they didn't set up the first division. And so I don't necessarily see why they'd feel eager to set up the second, you know?
So I guess the reason I asked is because the first iteration of NWSL, you saw like with the, I guess 1.0 with like Houston or what is it? Portland, Pride, and now the second line coming in with Utah, I guess, quote unquote sporting, but not really. Right. LAFC with Angel City. And
there's nothing official in San Diego, so
yeah,
that's okay. That's not associated yet. But it was a similar owner. Yeah.
How like those partnerships have expanded quite rapidly, but for the betterment of like these players and these teams. And for NWSL, even though they say they're moving more towards independent teams, there's still a lot of MLS coming on. So like that infrastructure there of like not maybe starting a second division, but definitely building more academies within. Like, does MLS go to like NWSL and like this USL-W and go, hey, we're gonna see what this looks like, and then in a year or so we can throw some more teams in
totally there. I think it would make sense if they actually added girls academies with their programs, because I think most MLS teams don't have girls academies, they just have boys academies. And so at that point, you know, the benefit for you, if you're looking at this, unfortunately, someone is going to say, well, it's a business. At some level of all of these questions, the answer goes to somebody who sees it as business, right? And I think that the business person in the room is going to say, okay, where are we getting these players? From outside? Okay, well, then that's cost money. That costs resources. We don't have claims, territorial rights, whatever. If they go off, they're playing well for us for our second division women's team, and suddenly Lyon, Chelsea, Arsenal, right? Barcelona, if someone, or, you know, even a tier below, but like a first division Dutch women's team comes calling and says, hey, we're interested in that player, they're free because they're probably playing amateur at that point. Or if they're D2, they're, you know, moving on for really not much of anything. So I think for them, you're seeing the partnerships change. Like, it's not like Houston, right? Or Chicago, where for a while it was just like, right, you know, especially with the Houston Dash and with Utah Royals, with RSL, where they're like in lockstep with each other. You're seeing Angel City is completely different ownership, really impressive ownership, but completely different people than are involved with LAFC, but they have found a way to agree on playing at the stadium, right? And the branding is so similar because they think that it means that both teams are going to benefit if they look pretty similar. I think that you saw the same sort of thing with you know, Gotham's doing their own thing, right? And I think that when you look at Racing Louisville, you know, like that's another one that's under the same umbrella as a men's team, but they found a way to where the crests, now they're designed to speak at each other basically, so they look like they're working off of the same template, and you play telephone different with both. I'm just mentioning games at this point. That's what I bring to the podcast. I'm never coming back, am I?
Well, that was NCFC and NC Courage. Like, we were USL championship, and we bought on the Courage, and those brands all fall under that one entity, but they're so vastly different that they bring different fans to the family that it feels like it's two different teams, like two different identities.
Like two different organizations or whatever.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you actually, like, have you seen that where you're getting completely different fans, or is it for the most? Really? Okay.
Yeah. So I go to both games. Like I have season tickets for both, obviously. Like
she got money.
Shut up. So I say this all the time. Like the men's team, we don't get a lot of it's not the biggest crowds in the world. I think we have 1,000 fans max in some of these games. But the supporter section is one of the we have a good time. It's raucous, it's loud, it's crazy. But for the women's game, they can sell out every game. But it's how do I get the supporter section to match that energy of the men's side? And it feels like it's two different brands. Just looking at it online, looking at it anywhere, it feels like it's two different brands. Being within the club and seeing some of the operations of it, it feels like this all one office, but it feels like it is very much one-sided.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Was that more of a thing before the pandemic? I mean, I'm just really curious because when North Carolina FC dropped to the League One, I think that was a question that myself and a lot of other people were asking was how will this impact their relevance compared to the Courage? So
I felt like the relevance was starting to lean towards Courage anyway. Going especially after the final and they won at home and it was big. And then 2020 then 2020 happened and it was okay, we'll really see what the difference between the two teams is and how it's supported. And then can't do that. So then 2021 and we dropped down a league. And so now it's a really big disparage. And we didn't get to see them on even playing grounds in terms of USL versus NWSL and fan support. I mean, the women win. We know that. They have the stars above their crest to prove it,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was, but now it's very skewed, and I feel like it was skewed before, but now it's very, very obvious within the fan side and it feels like the front office side too. You know what I would do then to fix that? I'd rename them the Railhawks. Just bring it back.
Bring it back.
At that point, just say look, either you're courageous or you're a Railhawk. And I think that most people can answer that question pretty easily.
Once again, hire us for marketing, baby. We here. We here.
Bring the orange back.
I hated the name Railhawks because there was a.
Why? What was it? What was it?
Bird game.
I don't know what a Railhawk is, but if you looked up the Urban Dictionary definition of it, it was bad. It was terrible. I was I could never, ever associate with that again. But
so
the last jersey that they did was fire. Yeah, that gray and orange one was their 10-year anniversary one. The best jersey I ever owned. And I'm so sad I lost that jersey. Oh, no. I lost it in a move. Yeah, I was so pissed. Never move. I'm moving in a month, in 4 weeks. So I move in 20 days. Actually,
doing adult stuff.
What day is it? Yeah, I know. Can we just talk about moving and packing? I hate packing, so let's do this.
Never leaving. Someone can pack for me. I'm not packing. What the fuck?
Oh yeah, I'm at that age now where my knees don't allow me to move anymore.
So someone else does it for you. There you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
At my days, yeah.
Someday.
Oh God! All right.
Jeff, let me ask you a question.
It looks like the Bucks are losing.
That's what all
they are not losing. Okay, they're losing. Never mind. Yep, I saw the score. I saw rail hawking on Urban Dictionary. That was my reaction.
Oh. Okay. Oh.
Because if you do just rail hawk, it doesn't pop up on Urban Dictionary.
Nope.
You raise a good point.
Need to worry about that.
Yep. I just looked it up too. Yep.
Moving on.
Welcome to the funniest podcast out there. Jeff, let me ask you this question, man. I think the one team that caught everyone by surprise was DC United. And the reasons why, Because you would assume DC United, Washington kind of working in tandem, but as we've seen, they're really not. So what is this all about?
Yeah, I think that they looked at I think that DC wanted to just be more involved in the women's game. And I think that the way their partnership is set up with Washington Spirit,
This is asterisk. It's horrible. Stupid.
Oh, interesting.
I said it for you so you didn't get fired.
Thank you. I appreciate that because I'm a Red Stars fan, so I can't say stuff anymore. Yeah, I think that a part of it was that they were very interested in getting more involved with the women's side of the game. I think that they overall really liked the. I don't know. I think that they just see so many players coming out of DC that they think that you can have multiple teams. Honestly, I think that they look and say, like, we want a team, we want more revenue, whatever it is, right? Whether it's tickets or whatever, like we have an opportunity here. They have had a good experience on the whole with Loudoun United. I think that they've been impressed with the USL infrastructure. I think that they see a lot of potential with it. Have they utilized it terribly well? I wouldn't say so. I don't think that they've had a lot of players who've come from that to help DC, but I do think that overall they have had enough of an experience where they like the direction it's going, and it just looked like a good entry point.
Okay, makes sense. I mean,
it's not a great answer, though, is it? Right?
The bigger question is why?
No, because it's DC United. Like, it just doesn't make sense. But a lot of stuff that DC United doesn't make sense. It is a dysfunctional club that is loved by everyone, and it doesn't make sense.
Hold on, I'm more wondering about Queensboro and why they got it, considering one of their owners is in hot shit for his sexual harassment.
There you go, Cal. There you go, Kyle.
How is Queen? So I'm just wondering, in terms of maybe USL is deciding David Villa is as far away from them now as possible, and we just don't know that, or USL doesn't care. Both is very possible. Like, I just want to know how Queensboro, of all teams, with an owner in the situation that he's in, sexually harassing NYCFC employees, how that got, and now they're going to have a women's team. That definitely raises a red flag for me.
Yeah, and it's an understandable red flag, and it's one I share with you, by the way. And I think that the first part of that answer is we haven't heard anything in terms of David Villa's involvement in that club since. We haven't gotten much of a response, right? I remember the statement that they gave me when I'd asked for comment after Pablo Maurer did his report about his credible accusations of sexual harassment during his time at NYCFC that you alluded to. And their response wasn't, it missed the mark, right? Like, I'm trying to remember what the exact words were, but I think it was like a no comment. In general, we support women, and also we support David Villa and his role in bringing soccer to Queens. Like, it was just a really poor statement. Trash. So then when you got it from there,
they hit us with the IQ no women.
Right. Like, as a father of daughters, as a son of moms of whatever, right? Like, this means a lot to me, and you don't need to
that
do
statement
that.
Reminded me of.
Yeah.
Loud noises. Don't pay attention to us.
They really haven't answered better than that. They haven't told us, like, what David Villa's role is anymore. Like, is it symbolic? We haven't seen him front and center in marketing anymore. They've completely changed it. We don't know. I honestly think that at this point, they were interested. They're certainly in a market that any sports league wants a team in New York. They wanted to do it, but I don't think that there's a really convincing, like, argument to be made that Queensboro has done enough to show that they take what you alluded to, they take sexual harassment and sexism seriously enough where they feel like a safe place to be playing or to be working.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think another question that concerns me is, like, just the facilities for a lot of these teams, because in USL, a lot of USL facilities aren't all that great. So now you're adding on another team, and we've seen how poorly some women's facilities are, especially with the NCAA.
Right.
How do you think this is going to be? I know Greenville owners have talked about it. They have alluded to it about when they build a new stadium, the women's will have their own facilities. But Is every team going to be like that? And I'm just wondering.
Should be, right? Like that should be part of it, I'd say. The question is like whether or not they do, and I think that this is one of the spaces. I don't think this is intentional, but this is one of the spaces where being amateur status helps the league avoid answering that, because there isn't a minimum standard. So what the standards when I say sanctioning, when I talk about D2, D3, all that stuff, and I'm pulling out the book, right, and I have this PDF on my desktop that's like reminding me anytime I need to click it, what it takes to be D1, D2, D3 at either men's or women's. Why that matters is because it's a minimum operational standard in theory that ensures your teams are at a baseline level of just that you have like a safety net at all of these teams. And I think that CBAs actually establish that like for real and give you a stability to build on minimum standards to grow. So that's a completely different conversation. You support the players, right? Like get that deal over the line hopefully soon for the championship and League One CBAs. But on the women's side, if they're amateur status, like they can, that's the aim eventually, right? But I think that if a facility needs to be like a 5 out of 10 and it's a 3, you can get away with that. If you don't have the sanctioning things to live off of, that club's just going to have a bad rap and they're going to have a tough time signing players in the future, right? And so then you're going to want to hold them accountable to keep the league going forward, but you're doing that in a completely different way than what the rules say, So, I do think that this league, with the USL headquarters, has the potential to fill that gap of D2 that I was alluding to earlier. But I think that the way it's set up right now with the D4, there's a little bit more or a little less pressure to get that answer right from jump, and you have a little bit more time to figure it out as you're flying.
Okay. Well, Jeff, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. I know I don't know what time it is in Minnesota.
It's like quarter to 9. It's fine.
It's not that bad. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I just want to say thank you, man, so much for coming on the show. If you want to, you're more than welcome to stay on with us as we talk about all the craziness in USL League One.
Oh, we're still doing that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we still have a really positive show.
How are the Bucks doing, by the way?
We're not talking about that.
All right.
I don't know what the score is. but the less I know, the better.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to go catch you.
God.
Keep up the good work, guys. Catch you later.
See ya.
All right, man. Wow. All right. So that was fun. Real quick, what you guys think about it, man? Like, how do you guys think this all is going to shape up?
I think for the MLS D3, it made sense. I've been saying I'd rather them just have their own reserve league. I'd rather all these 2 teams just leave, because when you think about trying to promote this soccer league, and especially if you're going to try and do pro rel and you really want to sell people on it, you need to have, a decent enough crowd to show that, okay, you have people that give a damn. And when one of your main matchups is going to be a 3 p.m. in a Toronto FC training field with no lights, or you get OCB in the past where there's more parents of the other team's players attending because snowbirds and stuff, other than Flamingos, shout out to him. Like, that's going to be embarrassing when you start having Revs 2 playing on a football field and it looks like the Patriots just finished practice 10 minutes earlier and then Revs 2 took the field. It just looks like a bad look. So you would hope that moving forward, and I've always said, have their own league. So I think this is going to be good. And then it kind of forces USL League One to start looking at more expansion markets. Like I said, Spokane, whenever the hell the one in Portland, Maine happens. And then you still have Fort Wayne joining. You still have you have Fuego joining. You have Northern Colorado. You might have an Arkansas. Like, you still have all these other markets that are going to possibly join in. And it's easier to sell them on that than it is. Yeah, some of the teams are going to be, MLS academies that don't really give a shit. They just need to give their players play time.
Yeah. Ab, I'm going to ask you this question because, I looked at you for all my
So I have a buddy that likes to say. So I have a buddy that says, fuck the 2s. So keep them out of here.
I just don't think. Because it was funny when Fort Lauderdale was announced. I was like, "Oh, we can do an away day to Fort Lauderdale." It's like, do you really want to go? Like, you're not even in Miami. You're still going to Fort Lauderdale. Like, you don't get the fun away day, and you're just going to be in the stadium and this was before COVID happened. It's like you're not going to get the same kind of vibes that you would hope if you were to go to Richmond, to Omaha, to North Carolina, to Greenville. Like, you're not getting that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I want to ask you real quick before we answer the fan question. How do you feel about USL-W coming into existence? Did she freeze on me? I think she froze.
Possibly. Wait.
Or maybe she's just drunk and she had to think of her answer. I think that's probably.
You're good now. You're good now.
She's drunk.
I think it's my internet. Hold on.
Oh.
So I'm okay with it because it's not professional.
Now she's gone.
Now she's gone. All right. So
Okay.
Back to this, we're answering the question when she waited for her to come back. Pretty much like, do you agree on crowds? For sure. Do you think it hurts some teams and to lose the easy wins? I'm
going to quickly answer it now that Ebony's back. I don't think it hurts the teams because as we are seeing most of the independent teams, we're starting to see a little bit more of the tiers almost. Like, we're starting to see, other than Tormenta, all the other independent teams are at least showing some capabilities of winning games. And Tormenta will pop up with a win every once in a while. They're just inconsistent. So I don't think it hurts them. If anything, I think it makes it better because then it really shows which teams are going to be the best teams, because now you don't have the potential unbalanced schedule of getting these easy wins. So, a couple of years ago, maybe a team plays OCB 3 times and another team has to play North Texas 3 times. It's stuff like that where it's like, now you take out that aspect. Then it's every team's independent, and that kind of gives you a better gauge of who actually is good and who isn't good compared to before, when it was like, if you played OCB 3 times, that's going to be a hell of a lot easier than the team that has to play North Texas 3 times in a season.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, y'all. Let's go ahead. Let's dive into it.
Are we not letting Ebony trying to answer the question?
Oh, that's right. Is Ebony? Oh, she's not unfrozen anymore. Ebony, answer the question.
Damn, I forgot the question. Oh, USL-W. Shut up. No, I think as long as it leads to player development and it doesn't directly impose on like NWSL, because NWSL is stable now, and to see something try to headbutt that would be detrimental to me, at least to the game. Especially trying to grow women's soccer here. So as long as it can be like a very profitable but realistic D2 or pre-professional, I'm good with it.
All right. Well, that's what's up, man. Definitely, listeners. If you haven't, make sure to follow USL-W. DC United is doing whatever the fuck they want to do, so who knows? Well, guys, we got an updated league table. So this week we're going to do a little bit differently. We did it based on points per game because not everyone has played the same game, and I think it gives us a better outlook of what teams are. So should I start from the top or should I go from the bottom?
Let's go from the bottom.
All right. Coming out at number 12 is North Carolina FC with 0.2 points per game. There you go, Ebony. Hold up the table. At 11, even though they won this past week, Tormenta is still at 11 with 1 point per game. Toronto FC dropped from 8 to 10 with 1 point per game. Revs 2 has 1.6. North Texas has 1.6. FC Tucson has 1.3. They're tied with Fort Lauderdale, who has 1.3 as well. Richmond is at 5 with 1.42. Ford is at 1.8. Red Wolves is at 2 points per game. Union Omaha is second with 2 points per game. And then Greenville is number 1 with 2.6 points per game. Ev, I got to ask you, since you are holding up the table right now, how are you feeling? Are you ready to hit the panic button? Or are Are you easing off of it a little bit?
I don't know. We were talking about this earlier. So it's not like they're bad or they're playing bad. They're just finishing bad.
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly what it is North Carolina cannot play about 95 minutes of soccer. It seems like they play 92 and then it's kind of like when you play a video game and then your controller dies at the end. That kind of seems to be what's happening when it gets to stoppage time. Like you are doing okay enough, and then you get the stoppage time, and then your controller dies, and by the time you get batteries or by the time you plug it back into charge, you've already lost, and there's been a goal score. I think that's pretty much been North Carolina's problem, if anything, between that and not finishing the chances.
We've been in second place the whole race, and then we got hit with that blue shell on the way to getting first, and then we went and now we're back in seventh. It's like, fuck.
I mean, for real, I think it's just. I think the FC Tucson game was poor. I think the Fort Lauderdale game was. Fort Lauderdale is not who we thought they were. They have definitely shown us they are a lot improved than what we thought they were. So really, you have one bad loss on your record. And like I said 2 weeks ago, I think if you would have told North Carolina Spurs, like, hey, look, your team is going to lose. Losses. What's the other one?
Ford. That was a shit game.
Yeah, Ford was all over them the whole match.
Yeah, that was a terrible game.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't think it's time to hit the panic button. I think it may be at a 5, but I don't think it's like you got to clean house again. I don't think we're at that point. You don't look at it as inept as some other teams in the league have looked at other points.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I wouldn't hit the panic button yet. Now, if you have one or two more of these late collapse, then yeah, go ahead and hit it. But I think it's clear that there is enough talent there. There is still enough talent. And your season it's still early in the season. You know, if you are in the same position as Tormenta, then yeah, you got to hit that button. But because the season started later, you still have more time to make up some ground.
Yeah, most definitely. So I think you guys are fine. Yeah. So should we go ahead and head into the power rankings?
Yeah, let me pull it up, I guess.
Let's see what the power rankings are looking like. This is what we got. I'm going to start off with number 1. I'm going to work my way down. Greenville's, of course, number 1. That hasn't changed. Union Omaha's number 2. Fort Madison dropped from 1 the week before to 3. Richmond goes up 1 there. 4. Fort Lauderdale goes up 1 there at 5. Chattanooga had a biggest loss. They dropped all the way from 3rd to 6. FC Tucson goes to 7. Toronto stays at 8. Rev 2 drops down to 9. Tormenta goes to 10. Texas goes to 11. And then North Carolina holds up the table again at 12. Anything you would change about that? I have one particular change in mind, but what do you guys think?
Not really. Like, I mean, at least at the top, like Greenville being number 1 makes sense. Omaha beating Madison in Madison, that moves you up. Yeah, that gets you to 2. Madison 3 is fine. Richmond 4. Fort Lauderdale felt like those all are understandable. I mean, Fort Lauderdale had a solid week, and hell, they could have had a great week if they had held on in the second half against Madison. But maybe I would have Toronto a little bit lower. That's like maybe I would have Toronto. I think Toronto and Rev 2.
That's my biggest issue. Is having to move 6 spots. They were at 11 last time we talked, and they moved 6.
I mean, when you compare it to all the other teams, I mean, besides the other team, the only team that was below them was Tormenta, and they won and they moved up too. But if you look at all the other teams, Chattanooga lost to Tormenta. Tucson didn't win any of its games. They just got a draw against TFC2, which is whatever. TFC2, again, they only got draws. Revs 2 lost. TFC2 did?
Tucson.
This past week. Wait, what? Either way, I still think I think Fort Lauderdale moving up that high makes a little bit of sense because they were pretty much in control against Madison. And again, had they not allowed the late goals, they probably would have won that one. And then they still go and beat North Carolina. That's 4 points in a week. It's still pretty impressive.
I just moving them up 6 spots. If it was 2 wins, yeah, I'm fine with that. But a win and a draw, granted, it's against 2 independent teams. I still think Chattanooga's ahead of them, so I would just switch them in Chattanooga. That's my only thing.
I guess do they look at it as losing to the team at the bottom hurts a lot more?
I mean, I think it varies weeks by week. I think it's based on the game.
Yeah.
We need to ask Murray this. He's the one that does it, so we need to ask him.
Yeah, I guess I don't have too much of an argument with this one because I can at least understand the logic of all these spots.
Yeah.
I don't expect North Texas to be down at the bottom.
No, not at all. All right, y'all. Well, we're going to go ahead. We're going to move into the pick'ems for this week. So, of course, the 3 games that we got for the pick'ems is Madison versus Richmond, Tucson versus Chattanooga, North Texas versus Greenville, Henny Derby. It's on Saturdays at 8. 3 out of 4 pick for Madison. I don't know what the fuck is wrong with them. I went with Richmond. I was not. I was going to go lock, but I was like, nah, I'm not. That would have been too homer. So I'm gonna pick my squad. I don't know what they thought when they were like 3 out of the 4. Like, of course, you know who that goal picked. Come on, y'all. We know this by now. We should know this. Well, Kyle, we already know your pick for it. What's your pick at?
I'm hoping for a very entertaining 3-3.
Bullshit. You rooting for chaos.
I mean, 3-3 would be chaos, but considering the last 4 Henny Derby matches, I don't see a 3-3 happening.
No. I see an own goal. I just don't know from which team.
Oh, God. There's going to be if Fort Madison allows another fucking own goal.
I see an own goal. We just don't know from who.
Own goal is Fort Madison's 3rd lead to score. Good God.
By the way, so Kyle, after listening to River City, or Can I Kick It? I'm sorry. Can I Kick It FC? I got to tell you how we got to Richmond. So NCFC was away, and we had messaged Connor, like, we want to see you play. Obviously, we weren't in the same league at that time. And we were like, well, where's the closest place you're going to go? Greenville or Richmond? It's like, well, I'll go to Richmond for you. So we literally just started messaging back and forth. And all of a sudden, there was an entire eruption tour with stops in like 6 different cities. And yeah.
Oh, these fuckers gonna lose this game.
Yo.
He's watching the Bucks.
I just want y'all to know Cal is going through it right now.
I am so fucking done with this team. Christ.
This is hilarious.
Durant just hit a cold-blooded 3, and it's just like, shit, they're not gonna win this shit.
Sorry, Cal.
Go on.
Are y'all being swept? Is this what's happening right now?
Game 4 will be on Sunday, and if they couldn't win this fucking game when Brooklyn was playing like ass for the first quarter, yeah, their ass is getting swept.
Yeah. Damn. I'm sorry, Kyle.
It'd be like that. Anyway, let's talk about more fun things.
I'm trying. I just want you to know
I
I'm
know.
trying for you.
Where were we?
Wait, who else plays this weekend? Oh, my team plays this weekend. Hey.
Bro, this is third time in this show and forgot her whole team.
We play Sunday. That's why. Prom Tom, Chattanooga. Wait.
Oh my God.
No, we
Sunday
don't.
night.
Next week.
Next week. I was like, you don't play this week.
Oh my
We'll play
God.
next week.
All right, so these are the other games of the pick'ems. We got Tucson versus Chattanooga. I got Chattanooga as my lock. I hope I'm right. And then we got North Texas versus Greenville. Everyone picked Greenville. What are your guys' picks for those two games?
Tucson and Greenville.
I got draw in Greenville.
All right. And then the other game we got is
I need chaos all weekend.
Yeah, this is true.
If this game was in Chattanooga, I would say Chattanooga, but I think with it being in Tucson, I'll say draw.
I don't trust Tucson's defense. Like, the offense is fine. I don't trust the defense at all. That's always been my biggest issue with Tucson. So we also got Tormenta versus Toronto FC2 in a remake game after the game this week, which I will die on this hill. Micheletto and Hara need to get out. They need to move away from South Georgia. Like, they are probably the only two players in that team that are worth anything. So, yeah.
Yeah, someone's got to help that man.
That's fucked up.
Bro, he does everything. And it's getting to the point where something got to move. Something got to happen. All right, so Marius Lomas wins USL Player of the Month. Carl Craig wins Coach of the Month. I think both were rigged. It is what it is.
Who do you think should have gotten Player of the Month?
I don't know. Well, I mean, Mario scored
Keegan
goals,
was
so that's
better.
fine.
I'm gonna throw that out there. Keegan was better.
You think so?
I'm honestly surprised considering. Well, it's funny because if you look at how the voting went, Acosta got 45% of the votes.
And Acosta leads the league in assists right
Viadir got 35% of the votes, and then it was Loomis with 16%. So it's kind of funny.
How does Loomis win that?
Because 40%, 60% of the poll was USL League 1 fan vote, and then the other 40% is a technical committee. I don't know. I don't understand it. Holy shit, the Bucks might actually salvage this game. Maybe. I figured Viadir would have gotten it, considering he came second in the fan vote, and he had a good month as well.
I would have gone to Costa just because he leads the league in assists right now for Fort Lauderdale, and also like you could tell the difference in that team when he's in it and when he's not, and he looked like a totally different team when he's not in that squad. He looks totally different. And outside of that, the last thing is USL Internationals. Dallas J played for Guam, gave up 10 goals, so gotta hope that form doesn't creep into Greenville. Gotta hope.
I mean, no offense to Guam, but it is Guam.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like Greenville has a better back four than Guam.
It was not good.
He tried.
I mean, if we're gonna talk international, Trinidad and Tobago hit the deuces.
Yeah. You know what's talking about? Guatemala didn't allow a goal the whole time and still gets eliminated.
Yo. I did not expect the Twitter to go into the kind of shitstorm it did when Trinidad and Tobago didn't make it. Like, Trinidad and Tobago Twitter is pissed.
Yeah.
Bruh.
They are.
Bruh, CONCACAF is the best league in the world, and you cannot tell me otherwise. You can't.
I was just
say
upset
shit.
Antigua could not pull through and get to the next round. Unfortunately, they lost to El Salvador, which was.
Look, I'm just hoping Jamaica get their stuff together and make it to what do we call it? Is the hexagonal, the 10?
It's an octagon.
The ox?
Are they already in it?
I don't know. But I just hope
they're in it.
No,
because America, Mexico, Costa Rica. Really? No, because I think America, Mexico, Costa Rica, Jamaica definitely has to be because it's based off like the top 5. I think it's like the top 5 ranked CONCACAF teams.
We'll see. I hope we do. So yeah, man.
Top 4.
I think that's probably it.
Okay.
Oh,
Top
also
4.
Curacao. You need to watch out for them because they coming with Netherlands B squad.
Yo,
they
I will make that trip.
They coming.
I will make that trip. I will make that trip, please.
All right, look, I'm all down for it. So anything else from you guys before we wrap up? I feel like most of the show was talking to Jeff, which isn't bad. That means we're real reporters now.
I was going to say, I think that was more noteworthy content anyway.
That's not bad at all.
Let's see. Any final parting things? Oh, if you want to make a pledge for the Henny Derby, where you can ask for any. Holy shit, the Bucks won! Wow, that's a miracle. If they can pledge however many dollars for each goal. For each of the Henny Derby matchups, it's going to go to local orgs that help the Black community. So this one's going to go to the YWCA in Madison because Fort Madison's a home team. So when it's in Richmond, Yogi will have an org as well. But yeah, if you want to do that, check out Featherstone's Twitter page. We'll tweet it as well from the Walking 90 account to fill out the Google form so you can make that pledge. You will then get a follow-up email on Monday to make sure that you donate.
Donate. Eb, anything from you, homie, before we wrap this up? Probably. So look, I'm halfway through this cup, and it's good.
It's after 10 o'clock, so we about to get primetime Yogi. So let's go.
And by the way, Jamaica is in the octagonal, so I'm excited.
I knew it.
Hopefully, we don't finish last.
Hey. I got nothing. I've been working, just out here.
I've been working on the rail hawks.
Get the fuck off my computer. You know what? Yo bullshit. I'm done with it.
And as always, guys, remember, Great Wall can't haunt you in your dreams. We'll holler at you guys later.
But he will haunt your DMs.
Be easy, guys.